I actually find yellow to be one of the trickiest colors to paint in watercolor. It's really easy to turn it into mud. But today I'm going to try painting this daffodil anyway, and I'll walk you through my entire process. When I layer color, when I stop and dry the paper, how I fix mistakes, and how I build the final details. If you'd like to paint along and hear my thought process as I work, you're in the right place. My name is Jessica, and I'm so glad to have you here. Let's go ahead and get started. Now I'm going to go ahead and start with a drawing for those of you who like to follow along. However, I do have an outline for this daffodil in my Etsy shop, so if you prefer tracing, that option is available for you as well. Okay, so I have a cheap piece of paper. This is just computer paper. I'm going to do my drawing on here initially, just so that I'm happy with the placement and my composition, and then I'll go ahead and transfer this to watercolor paper. So I'm just going to lightly sketch a kind of circular area where I want to place the flower. And then I'll have the stem somewhere here. Again, I'm being very loose and sketchy just because composition is an area that I feel like I need to kind of refine before I get right into the painting. So I wonder if I can put maybe a stem back here, or not a stem, rather a leaf. Let's try that, and maybe one kind of drooped over like so, and something like that. Yeah, and then I'm going to go ahead and draw the daffodil here. So this is going to be where I put that initial kind of circle oval center here. And this is going to be where it opens. So I'll just do these little lines to kind of represent the little creases and folds. And then I'll have it kind of come out this way. I'm going to get some more details after. I'm just trying to get a really rough basic sketch here. And I'm not following every crease fold bump. I'm just kind of doing a little bit of, yes, looking at my reference photo, but also just taking a little artistic license and not copying this right to a T. So something like that. Then in here, this is where we kind of see that the trumpet shape. And I'm just going to go ahead and do something like that. And I'm kind of imagining a straight line running through here. So that's kind of what I have in my mind. I'll refine things again. And this petal here I'm changing. There were some things with the petals here I really didn't care as much for, but there was enough I liked about this picture that I decided to go ahead and use it. But definitely the petals were a little bit, not exactly what I was after. So change that up a bit. And maybe even bring it, you know what, I might even tweak that a little bit. Just use my kneaded eraser since it's handy. Then I'm going to try and shift it just a little. Make it a little bit more upright, something like that. And then this one here, I'm going to make this one folded over. So it kind of overlaps in here, and then it comes something like so. An interesting little swoop here. This is kind of where I'm seeing the creases and folds kind of moving that way. I'm going to make this folded over. You can definitely see this is an interesting shape. I think these shapes are really fun to draw because they're unique. And it makes it a little more interesting to have these petals like this. So this one's something like that. And then this one, get this little folded over piece in here, and then just draw this in like, kind of like so. Maybe like that. You can see I'm kind of adjusting. I'm very sketchy as I do this. And then there's a petal back here. I'm going to change it to a little bit. Kind of copy what I see, but take a few little tweaks here. Something like that. You know what? I'm not going to worry about the fact I can't see that one in the back very well. I'm going to just maybe ignore it. We'll just pretend it's kind of behind here. I think I'm overall happy with this. I want to make sure I'm happy with the way this is coming back here, that it does give this impression that it's running through. And then I'll just bring it down. I might bring this up a little bit like so. We're having it folded over like that. So I'll just do something, actually, make it more like this. You can see that whole piece there, and then it's folded over under there. So we're going to make it dark under there after when we go to paint it, and you'll get the impression of the fold a little bit more clearly. And I don't like how this is running right up into here. It's kind of creating a tangent. So like it's running exactly almost there. So I'm just going to move it inwards a little bit. There we go. That's a little bit better. Then I'm going to go ahead and trace this onto my watercolor paper. So I'm just going to turn this around and scribble on the back of this where I can see where my drawing was. I'm just looking through. I can see a bit of light coming through here. So I'm going to just give myself a quick outline of where my drawing actually is, so I don't have to scribble on the whole back of this. Actually I almost do anyways, because I'm almost filling the page. Anyway, I'm just using a 6B pencil. I'm just scribbling over everything, particularly wherever I had that initial drawing. And as you know, I also do make my own graphite paper, which can sometimes save a little bit of time here. You're welcome to do that instead of scribbling, or use whatever other transfer technique you prefer. So here's my arches, 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. I have the smooth side up. I'm going to lay my image directly down onto there. And if you don't want things to move around, you could tape it really quickly with some masking tape just at the corners to keep it from shifting. I can just line up the edge of my drawing with the edge of my paper, and I think I'll be okay. Then I'm using a colored pencil to go ahead and trace this. The benefit of using a colored pencil is that you can kind of tell where you've already traced. Sometimes a graphite pencil, you can end up getting lost because it just blends in with your sketch. All right, there's my drawing. I'm going to use my kneadable eraser just to lift that a little bit because it is quite dark. I want to be able to see these lines. I can also remove smudges with this kneadable eraser as I erase the lines. I want to still see them, but definitely not as dark as I've got them right now. I can just lightly come over anything that's lifted a little too much with my drawing pencil. Might even pull, you know what, I'm going to pull this stem a little bit, or this leaf a little closer to my stem. Looks like it's maybe coming out of the ground from the same plant, right? So I'm going to start out by applying some yellow over the whole thing. I'm actually going to do wet on wet. So I'm going to wet the daffodil, just the flower, and then I'm going to drop some of my Hansa Yellow Deep into it. So just quickly cover this with some water. And I am using my Simply Simmons brushes right now, but I will also be using my Ortegria round brushes. I like them both, and I'll explain why in a minute. Finish filling this in. These Simply Simmons brushes are firmer, which is kind of nice when you're just starting out. Makes water control easier, but with the layering, we're going to want something softer too. So I'm going to come in here first, drop in this beautiful bright intense yellow, just kind of get it a little bit everywhere. I'm using it pretty much straight out of the tube. There's a bit of water in my palette, but I'm going very concentrated, especially in the areas of this flower that are very bright. You can see I didn't even quite come to the edges of these little ruffles with my water. I'm doing that with the brush. I don't mind having a little bit less pigment right here and then more kind of here. Let's come down here as well. And I'm not worrying about having everything perfectly smooth because I don't mind having a little bit of variation in my yellow. Some that's a little bit more pastel, some that's a little more intense. I'm just going to fill that in. We could always add that tiny bit of yellow. I know you can kind of see that petal back here. I don't know. I'll just pretend, just put a little splash of yellow there. We just have to remember that's a petal and it's not part of this. All right, so while that's drying, I could probably go ahead and put a light layer of green over the leaves and they can both dry at the same time. So this is my Hansa Yellow Deep once again, and I'm just going to take a bit of this darker green I've mixed up from before, mainly Hansa Yellow Deep with phthalo blue. I often put a touch of quinacridone rose into my greens just to neutralize them ever so slightly, but for the most part, that green will be the Hansa Yellow Deep and phthalo blue. Now, the one thing I don't want to do is touch the yellow, so I'm going to just be careful that I don't do that. I don't want the color bleed. I don't mind having this bright green though, filling these in, and then I can come back and, you know what, I need a little more, a little bit more yellow, I think, and water. Anyways, I can come back in and fill in some of the spots afterwards. This is going to be so dark that having that weird edge there isn't going to matter. Now for painting the stem and leaves, I'm going to show you the finished painting of this daffodil so that you can use that as a reference. You're going to notice I deviated a little from my drawing and I ended up fixing it at the end. So this daffodil is my corrected version, but if you want to watch how I actually made those corrections, you can see that at the end of this video. And I don't mind the stem and the leaf blending together at this point either, because again, I'm going to be coming in and refining things with a darker green. And here, I'm just going to fill that in again. I don't want the color bleeds happening, so I'm just being careful. Leaving a little gap, and I'm not minding leaving that little gap if I'm coming in with darker green to cover that gap. I'm just going to fill this in almost like I'm just coloring it solid, nothing to this. I can make a little bit more of a rough base here. Oh, good enough. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and dry this, and then I'll be back and we'll add another layer. Okay, so now I've got in my palette kind of an orangey yellow color I mixed up, mainly Hansa Yellow Deep, tiny bit of quinacridone rose, and I kind of had a little bit of like a brownish color in my palette before, so it would have meant there was probably a little phthalo blue in there as well to neutralize it ever so slightly, but it's mainly Hansa Yellow Deep and quinacridone rose. So I'm going to use that color, go a little deeper and darker. And I have my number 6 round Simply Simmons as well as an 8. I'm going to use the 8 to soften, so it's just going to have water on this brush. The 6 will be the one for pigment, and I'm probably going to use a little bit more of my bright yellow, the Hansa Yellow Deep, along with this other mixture, because I feel like some of my yellows are just a little bit pastel in a few spots. So what I'm going to do is just come in here and do a few, I'm going to start here and do a few of these creases and folds. I could actually have a little more water on the tip of my brush. It's quite intense. Creases and folds just in this section. Whoops, that was a really wonky one. I'm trying to follow the direction of the creases and folds that you can see in the photo. Then I'm going to just use some water. So this is my water brush, if I can speak. And I'm going to just soften those a little bit. And then I'll drop in some of this as well. And it might bleed around because I do have some water here, so I'll have to be careful. Just kind of come around like so, get some of these creases and folds. Change my position so that I get this working for me. I kind of like that actually, but I'm going to just soften a little bit with my water brush. I'm liking how this is coming. I'm going to put a little bit more up here. It's quite dark up here, and I like that. I like that look. So just put a little bit more of this golden color. Kind of coming up to here, and then back to my water brush. If you ever find your water brush is kind of dragging that dark color where you don't want it, just go ahead, wash your brush, dry your brush, and come back in. I'm just gonna drag things around a little bit down here. Overall, I think I'm happy with that section of the flower. So I'm gonna let it dry. I'm gonna skip this area for now because we don't want to have bleeding. So I'll come into here. I'm just gonna put a little bit of water right in this section. So I'll work wet on wet and just drop a little bit more of this yellow in here. Take a few little, oh, I just went and used my water brush. That's okay. I'll wash it off. I kind of like to have, you know, the paintbrush, the water brush, but in that case, I didn't. And you can see sometimes I just pick up whatever brush is in my hand. Okay, let's just go like this. I'm going to try and create a little bit of the creases and folds with this color. Well, it's damp. It's not, you know, you see they're not staying perfectly, but I'm getting a little bit of detail in this section of the daffodil. Kind of like so. I might just lift a little bit here so I've got a nice light there. Happy with that. Okay, I think I can probably get away with painting a little bit more color onto some of these. Let's try it because I'm pretty much clear water here. So let's do this one back here for now. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wash my brush, and maybe I'll just go ahead and intensify the yellow first. Some yellow there. Let's just do this one and then we can skip around. We can do every second petal. I'm gonna drop a little bit of this color here and tap it off. It's a little bit much, and put a little bit here. We're gonna guide that around a little bit more on the other side, don't worry. Just tap that off. This is my water brush. Guide that around and call that good. Then I think I could probably come, well, gonna have to be careful here. Don't want to apply too much water. I might even just leave a slight gap there. To be careful because you could get a bloom when you introduce water right here because this is starting to dry. I'm going to put a little bit, and I've got a mixture on my brush because I've got that deeper color on here. You could have another brush, one for the bright yellow, one for the golden yellow, but I'm just going to drop in some of the brighter yellow for now, especially in this lower section here. I'm ignoring the fact there's a cast shadow on there. I don't think I'm going to worry about that too much. Just drop some more yellow down in here. Maybe I'll come and do this shape here, and I'm just going to do this section that's got the light on it, and I'm just going to come in here. Everything's dry. I'm working wet on dry at this minute. Actually, I can bring a little bit into here where there's a shadow. I'm just going to put that water there, or sorry, not water, paint, and then just bring it downwards a bit with my water brush. Get a little bit of a crease and fold happening there. I think I can even just still, with the paint on my brush, just put a little bit more yellow right here. Join these shapes for now because I'm going to separate them with some more yellow, that deeper yellow after. So just get all this bright yellow. A little more intense down here. Then I'm going to go and dry things. Then I can come back and intensify my yellows with that deeper kind of golden yellow. Okay, so things have been dried and I'm just going to repeat that on this petal here. So just put some water on and then I'm going to start into the brighter yellow first. I see some beautiful creases and folds in this one. We'll see how much of that I maintain as I'm working wet on damp, but okay, something that's a little bit more bright right there. And you know what, it'd be good if I had another brush on the go. So I have a second number 6 here. So I'm gonna use one for the darker color, and that way I don't have to keep washing my brush out. Just put a little bit of those creases and folds in this area, a little bit there. Then I could probably use the yellow or the clear brush to move things around, but yeah, let's use the water brush. Just guide that ever so slightly, gently. There we go. I'm liking this. Okay, maybe even a little bit more of the golden color. Sometimes it's helpful to have a different size brush or a different brand of brush. If you've got 2 identical ones, it's actually kind of interesting. I might switch out and use an Artegria brush, because I can't tell which of these 6s has what on it till I actually touch it to my page. I'll use this Artegria 6 for the gold color. That'll help me keep it straight. Alrighty, now I'm going to go ahead and wet this one again and do a few of the creases and folds. And this one had enough of the bright yellow, so I can just come in here and just go ahead, creases and folds with the golden color. Put a little bit more here. And let's just lift a little bit with the water brush, kind of guide it around a little. I actually kind of wish I had a little more of a point here. Let's see if we can create one. I don't know if I like that. That's okay. Let's go down and finish these ones down here. I'm going to do this one that's kind of back here. I'll do it first, and then I'll come back into that one later on. Again, I'm just trying to prevent things from bleeding around too much. Okay, do this darker shape with the golden color. I used a lot on there. And then I'll bring this forwards. I kind of have a slight bit of dryness between there. It's kind of touching, but not completely. So that's how I'm getting away with this. I'll blend them together with my water brush. I'll soften it without making it too extreme. Yeah, I like that. Okay, what I'm going to do, I can do this little shape here because it's kind of on its lonesome. So I'll just put a little bit of that golden color in there. And then that. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit in here as well. I'm just working wet on dry. Might even put, do I want a little bit here? Oh, I'll just leave it. Now, because things are fairly dry, I'm thinking I can come in with my bright yellow and just do a little bit of these details on here, creases and folds, and then the gold color. Let's try it. Almost a little too much yellow. Actually, it's pretty intense though over here. So I'll just come in here, do some of these creases and folds. Then with my water brush, I'll just come and kind of soften them a little bit so they're not too extreme. Do a little bit more as I come down this way. Try and pay attention to some of the direction of the way things are moving. Something like that. Didn't really achieve any of those folds there. They've disappeared, but that's okay. I will come in and get a little bit of the golden detail on here, and then if I need to, I can come add another layer. So I'll do a few of these. Try not to go over the line if I can help it. Okay, let's try a little bit down here. I don't know how well they're gonna hold out. I can see a lot of this kind of gold color along this bottom edge. Did you see that in the reference photo? Just gonna drop a little bit more along here, and then I think I'm dry enough or damp enough. I can, oops, kind of botched it a little bit. Let's try and just drag these little shapes a little bit like so. Maybe a little bit here. Yeah, I think I kind of like that actually. Just soften that little mess that I made there. And you could always drop a little bit of yellow in here if you want to after. I actually don't mind that tiny bit of white. I think it's pretty. Okay, I think, yeah, things are a bit damp, but I think we can get away with this little shape now. So I'm gonna come in here, maybe just a tiny bit of yellow. So just coming on wet on dry. Oh, there's not much yellow left on this brush. Just put a little bit more in here, kind of at the base. Then I'll use the gold color and just kind of sort of create a little creases, folds, and fill this darker space in. We're going to get darker still. Let's do something like this. Try and show that this is all kind of one petal folded over. You can see I'm leaking onto this one. That's okay. I'll just use my water brush and just guide that paint downwards a little bit. We're going to separate them better in the next layer when we add our shadows. So it's looking a little funny right now. That's okay. We're not done. Just lifting with my water brush because I want a little more light there. I want to have that beautiful fold kind of show up. And maybe a little bit more yellow on there. Just like so. Okay. Let me go ahead and dry this layer, and then I'll come in and start adding some shadows. Now that I've dried it, I'm wondering if I want a tiny little bit more of the gold color in here. This is optional. Really, you could move on if you're happy with yours. I'm just wondering if I want to put a tiny bit more in here, and I'm working just wet on dry. And I'm going to do these creases and folds, and then I'm going to use a soft brush, or my water brush rather. It's the firmer one. We'll talk about brushes in a minute here, but use this water brush and try and soften these edges really quick here. It's just so that I'm a little bit darker. Things are starting to dry. I left it just for a couple seconds too long. It's okay. I think I'm happier with that. I just feel like it gave it a little more depth. Maybe I'll do that just in a few spots, just a few little creases and folds. Like so, just for a smidgen bit of depth. This, I don't even mind them being hard edged, to be honest. Just give this a little quick blend with water too. Yeah, maybe just a little bit in here. Just push that back just a bit. My brush is kind of dry, so it's kind of acting up a little weird, not as flowy, but that's okay. I think I'm happier. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some other colors for my shadows. And this is where things get a little bit interesting. I always find yellows are the absolute hardest color to work with because of the way shadows can get muddy so quick. So I definitely want this to be dry before I add my shadows. So I'm going to just give it a quick blast of heat with the hairdryer, and then I'll start putting my shadow colors on top. So I have this burgundy color here. And then in this palette, I have a variety of purples that I would have made with quinacridone magenta and phthalo blue. Let's just test some of them and just kind of let you have an idea of kind of the colors that I'm going to be using. So that's kind of more of a pinky color. This one's a little more on the bluey color, both purples, but I'll probably use a blend of these as I go. I'll kind of start more in the burgundy color side, and this color would have had more quinacridone rose in it, whereas these ones had quinacridone magenta. So I'll be working more from the reds into the purples, but I'll explain as I add these colors. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and use number 6 Artegria for this initial burgundy color. And then I might do a little bit of blending with those colors after, but we'll just drop some of this in first. This is always kind of the interesting part because yellow can get muddy so fast. I might even actually, you know what, for my water brush, I'm using another Artegria because I find the yellow, when it's so intense, it lifts easily. These softer brushes kind of prevent as much lifting. So I'm going to use softer brushes now. So I'm going to come in here and just blend. So you can see I get it on there and then blend it with my water brush. So I'm using the slightly larger brush. This is an 8. I'm using it for the water and I'm using the 6 for the paint. Just blend that around. I find the softer brushes just help prevent mud. I find yellow goes muddy really, really easily because I think the intensity and how much pigment is on there, it just lifts and it just, part of it's the color. I find yellow the hardest color to avoid getting muddy, but also I think it has to do with the concentration of the paint and the brushes. There's so many factors that play into it. So I'm just dropping these in just where there's more shadow. Liking that, I think. So just a little bit of that texture. Maybe put a little bit, tiny little bit of this reddish color over here. Don't want too much. And then again, blending it out with my water brush. Just a little bit. Because I haven't wet everything, I'm getting away with doing shapes that are touching each other. So let's do a little bit of that color. Maybe in here. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to add a little water to my brush. So this is still my paintbrush, but I'm dipping it. I've got my water here. It's kind of tinted now. But I'm dipping it into the water and so that I'm more diluted. I don't want to have as strong a pigment happening here. So I'll just do a few of these creases and folds. Soften. And soften. Things are looking a little bit pink. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come down here with this color and just put it on wet on dry. I'm going to come in with a shadow color on top as well. So I'll just come in here, fill in these shadowy shapes. Just drag this down. Actually, I'm just noticing that kind of made that a little bit different there. I'm just going to drag that shadow down a little bit more. And then I'm using my water brush to kind of just extend those lines. I need a little more water on it and letting it almost be like a wet on dry as I come down. Let's put a little bit under here. You can see I'm running out of paint on my brush. It's not as concentrated. Let's just fill this in with water and then drop a little bit more of that paint. And I'm going to drop in some deeper colors here in a quick minute. I think I'm ready for some more purples because this is a pretty color, this gold or this reddish color, but it's too on the red side. So I'm going to need some shadow colors. They're a little bit more dull. Just throw a little bit of that on there. Okay, let's call that good. I think I want to move into the purples, but I'd rather dry it. I don't want to take any chances. Like I say, yellow's finicky. I'd rather work in layers than to allow the colors to blend too much. That's where things will get muddy. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm just noticing this. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and dry things and then I will be back. If you're enjoying today's video, I would love to invite you to join my free newsletter. In it, you'll find creative inspiration and be the first to know about new tutorials, classes, and workshops. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, you can find a link in the description below. Now let's get back to painting. All right, so now I'm going to come in with this purple and just kind of repeat those steps and push these shadows a little darker. I might dilute my paint a bit, but you can see I'm just coming in, paintbrush, water brush, and these soft brushes are going to allow me to maintain some of the beautiful yellows without getting mud. So I'm just coming in here. I'm going to put a little bit more yellow in, or not yellow, a little bit more of that purple color here, and just softly blend it out. Let's put a little bit down here. Do this little shadow. We'll probably even drop a little bit more. I've got some of this color over here that's more on the bluey purple side. Let's use a little bit of that in this shadow and kind of push that a little bit in here too. It's going to be more of a muddy color, but whoops, went over the line. Oh well, that's okay. I'm going to let that shape be for now, and I'm going to do this one too. I'm just going to put a little water. Could just do it wet on dry though. And just gently put in a little bit of that bluey color. Again, that's very intense. Let's tap some more water in there so it's a shadow, but not super dark. Kind of like that. Just try and tweak that a little bit there. Those are going to be some of my darkest darks in this whole painting. So just so you're aware, we're not going to go that dark everywhere. Let's put a little bit of darkness here. This is a nice shadow down here as well. It's kind of it's kind of in the shadows, if you will. Just move that around with our water brush. I'll just drag that like so. Makes kind of a muddy color, but I think that's okay for the shadows. Let's put a little bit, I'm gonna add a little water to the tip of my brush. I've still got that more purpley blue color on here. I'm gonna do a little bit of these shadows with it over here. You can kind of see shadows on that part of the petal, then water. To move fairly quickly here. Just guide that around a little bit. You can see I'm starting to dry. I'm not moving fast enough. Oh, I'm gonna be okay. Good. Just intensify this down here. Maybe I could have even put a little bit more of that purpley color on this one, I think, to create a little bit of variation in this particular petal, but that's okay. Why don't we just drop a little bit of that down, maybe down here. It's going to leak into the petal beside it, perhaps. Okay, that was my water brush the whole time. Sometimes I just grab whatever brush is closest to me. Not sure if I like that. Let's play with that for a minute. Oh well, I can always add a little bit of one of the other colors on top after. I don't usually like laying yellow on top of these other colors, but if I need to, I can. Okay, I'm gonna do this one. I'm just gonna put a tiny little bit of creases and folds using more of this pinky color. So I'll just come and do a little bit here and then tap my brush off, my water brush, just guide those around a little bit. Yeah, kind of like that. Maybe a few more down here. Some more in the shadow, lower down on this flower. I'm gonna try and curl that around a little bit with the way that I applied the paint. Yeah, I kind of like it like so. Yeah, I like that. I like that color. That's really pretty. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little bit of that here. I gotta be careful I don't dip into these lower shapes here. Water now. I do like that purpley color. Let's put a little bit of it up here too. Goes on top of the yellow really pretty. Not as intense as going completely into complementary colors like purple, but it does create a beautiful shadow. Let's do a little bit of that color in here too. I'm gonna be careful with these creases and folds that I kind of get them moving in the direction I want them to. I don't even mind actually with those being hard edged. I might come back with the purpley color after. Could be more intense and more dark in there. I'll put just a few in this area here too. Again, some places I'm almost going, you know what, I could almost have a little bit of that burgundy color again. Let's just take a little bit of that burgundy color and just put it on top of there and then blend it around. I probably could even have a little bit of an orangey color, but I'm not sure if I want to take that chance. I could make mud if I'm not careful at this point. Should we try a little bit of that orangey color? It's working okay. I think because we don't have too much blue yet in this area, we're getting away with it. Put that on there, try a little bit of the water. Just drag it around a little bit. I'm gonna just let that sit the way it is now. Okay, I'm just gonna tap a little bit of water and then I'm gonna let that area sit. Actually, I might even put just a little bit right here. But then I'm gonna let things dry and then I can come in and deepen the details, but it felt like it was almost like too anemic there. It needed more of that initial gold color underneath. That's just a personal thing, but it worked because we weren't getting too much of the deep purple and the gold color together. So now everything kind of needs to dry. I'm not 100% happy with this color here. I feel like maybe I went a little too dark, especially with the way this is kind of, this whole petal's working, it's different. So I'm going to use this Simply Simmons brush and see if I can lift it a little bit. So I'm just going to stroke it. It's a little bit risky to lift at this stage, but I think we're going to be okay. It's just going to get lighter, and then I'll have to come in and refine that after. So I'm kind of scrubbing it a little bit with the Simply Simmons brush, and then I'm going to take a paper towel and tap. Ooh, not loving that. That's okay. We will figure out how to fix it in the next layer. I don't like how I lifted that at all. I might come in here with this little scrubber brush. This is just a shader brush, just a little firmer than the Simply Simmons. Try and lift a little bit. I can see I'm really not happy with this. Probably should have left it. That's okay. You guys get to see me make a mistake and fix it and see how we pull through this. So I'm just going to do my best to kind of scrub it, and I'll probably have to layer back on top of that. I'd rather almost take more out than not enough. And you can see I'm getting, as I scrub here, you see that little bloom I'm getting there? That means I got to wet beyond my mess. Let's just wet this whole petal. Smooth that out. Smooth it out, smooth it out. Tap, and then I'm going to have to go use the hairdryer, and then we're going to have to fix that. Okay, I'm going to do a quick little sketching there for myself just to make sure I'm going to be happy with where I place things when I come in here with my corrections. So now what I'm going to do is just come in with a little more of the gold color, because as you see I lifted it off. So I'm just going to put some water, just doing this one petal, just this one, and almost like I'm taking it kind of back almost to the beginning. So we'll just pick up a little bit of the yellow and the gold color just to kind of get it back to where I'm happy with it. Just a little bit more yellow here, and then the gold. I'm using the same brush, not worrying about mixing them. I just want to make sure I'm happy with the amount of gold that I have in here. I might push it a little bit further than what I even did. Okay, we'll just wash that off and kind of just guide it around a little bit, because after this I'm just going to be using my shadow colors. You know what, I might pull this color into here as well. Let's just do that. Let's just take that gold color and pull it into this shape. It's kind of the shadowy color, shadowy side of this one. I think I'm happy with that. So we're just basically filling this area in. I'll just, again, I'm using the same brush, just softening this edge, just because I don't have much to do here. If I was doing lots of shapes, I'd want to have two brushes, but I'm okay. I think I'm happy with that. So I will have to still add the shadow colors, but I feel like it's going to be retrievable. So that's good. Let's let that dry. Maybe I can come over here. Just be careful I don't dip into my paint, but I could add a little bit of shadow onto this part of my flower. So come in with the purpley color. And again, we're working in those shadows. I want to use these softer brushes. So I'm going to come in here and just put a little bit of shadow into this section. Be oh so careful this time, and just blend it around with some water. Probably put a little bit of shadow over here, just a touch. And I'm working wet on dry, and then I'm just softening it with this brush. Actually, the other place I could push my yellows further, this is dry, so I can get away with it. I do not like putting yellow on top of shadow colors usually, but because I'm going to try and work really lightly, again, why don't we just use this softer brush to re-wet this shape so we don't pick up too much pigment. Just wet that one shape. Coming in now with my Simply Simmons and some of the gold. Drop just a bit down in here. Just guide that around a little bit. Again, this kind of pushing this petal behind the, like I like this one being in front, so I like the fact this one's getting darker. Could even have another coat of that color on that little tiny petal back there. Okay, much happier. Just going to guide this around gently, and I'm going to let that dry. I think we're going to be okay. All right, I'm going to work from left to right as I complete the shadows. I know we're really wanting to get to that part, but I'm going to just do this because it's easier to kind of work in this area first. And I'm going to use a kind of diluted version of this purple. I'm feeling, oh, it's actually not as diluted as I thought it might have been. It's okay. I'm going to add water. And I know my shadows and whatever on this section aren't identical to the reference photo, and that's okay. I'm just trying to do kind of a loose version of this and have a little bit of freedom to play with these shapes and lines. So just putting a little of that, blending it out. I'm a little bit cautious when I come in with this purpley color. This is where really you can end up with mud. You have to be oh so careful when you're applying like a purple like this on top of yellows. That's how you get the darkest shadows, but I just find they get muddy so fast. So just take it in stride. I think I'm happy with that. I don't want to touch it too much, so I'm going to let it be. I might even tap, you know what? I might even tap a little bit off down here so I have a little more light. Just like that. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it like that now. And maybe I'll put a little bit of that shadow color. We'll do a blend. Just mix whatever we've got here. Just put a little bit under here. And then water. Move faster. And just blend that. Just bring it down in here a little bit too. Just so it can kind of help that pop. So we have a nice deep kind of purple shadow here. Yeah, I think that's good. And I might drag it down just a little bit more into here. And then water. Okay. Now let's come back in. I'm going to wash my brush so I can go more into the pinky color. I'm just going to push this shadow in here a little bit. Ooh, or a lot bit. Let's guide this around with the water brush. And use the tip of the brush just to kind of get that to come in here a little bit so it separates the petals. Kind of like so. And then we could maybe carefully put a little tiny bit of it down here. Again, just to create a little bit of separation between these two petals and a little bit of variety. So using my water brush to bring it upwards. I try not to touch that shape, but just drag this up. Almost like creases and folds, but it's just water on my brush and whatever paint I'm moving. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing first. I'm just going to do that here, kind of like creases and folds. I got to be careful I don't like bleed too much into there. Creases and folds on top of that shape that messed up earlier. And then I'll come in and just finalize the shadow. Kind of something like that. A little more water on this side actually. A little bit more paint just along here. It's already getting not bad. Oh, I say thank you, Lord, when I make mistakes like that, and a little bit scary, you know. All right. I'm going to drag that also down in here a little bit, and then we'll separate them with the bluish color at the end. Okay. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to let it dry. The thing I'm not sure I'm happy with is how much of this blue I've got here. I might just lift a little bit of it off, purpley blue. Just a tiny bit, and tap it. If I'm careful, I might not have to do anything to this area. We'll see. Just rub it gently, tap. Might need a little more yellow in that area after. So while this is drying, I'm going to go ahead and work on the greens. Now I've taken my green here. This is kind of the deeper green that I had, but I added a tiny bit of this brownish color. You could use red just to make it a little bit more on the olive side. So what I'm going to do is fill in, I'm going to come along this line. This is where it's folded over. So I'm using the firmer brush now. And I'm going to come and do a few of these little creases and folds. It's almost too much paint on here. Do this, and then I'm going to use my water brush and soften to create some of that texture. And then I might even come on wet and create a little bit more. We'll see. Just using this brush for now. Put a little more dark along this bottom edge. So now I'm working wet on wet to get some of this on here. Just go like that. And then what I'm going to do is let this section dry before I do the leaf right beside it. You could even, if you want to, throw a little bit of this goldish color in too. Just adds a little bit of variety to your greens. I think I like that. Okay, let's go ahead and do this one. So I'm gonna wet this shape. This time I think I might work wet on wet with this one, except I'm gonna use this green and I'm gonna come in and tap it all along that area where we have the little gap. Could even use a smaller brush. Why don't we do that? Let's use a tinier brush to get into that little tiny little spot there. So this is just a small Artegria. This is a number 3. Just come up in there. There we go. Could even actually, this is nice to just work with. I could just come in and do the creases and folds wet on wet with this brush. Do that a little ways. Let's go back. Let's just tap this brush off now and come a little further with it. Running out of paint with the small one. Oh, I'm getting a little bit dry. Let's just add a little water and just kind of keep coming downwards this way. Okay, you know what? Kind of dry there, so I'm just going to add water to this section and get that nice and smooth, and then I'll drop more paint in because right now it was kind of like not acting wet on wet anymore. And that's the technique I think I want for this. So let's just add a little more of that gold color. I do like how the gold is in kind of mixing in with the green. So just put that on there and then just do a little bit of blending with a little more water. Then I'll pick up that tiny brush again to do the details. Wet on wet. So let's do that. So let's just try. So the paper's kind of a damp stage right now. I'm just going to see if I can get these little creases and folds on here. Just coming down, let's wet. A smaller brush can help with some of these details. You do this with a larger brush. Sometimes you can do it, you just have to be more careful. Those Simply Simmons brushes, you can do it, you just have to kind of squeeze them out a little bit so they're not too wet. Ooh, I just really slopped there. Oh well, we're extending this petal out a little bit. Or not petal, leaf. So just tricks that along like that. There we go. I kind of like a little bit of that color showing through in less detail, but let's just go like so. Add a little bit more detail there, just a bit. Okay. Yeah, the Simply Simmons, what I was starting to say was you can kind of squeeze them out first, tap them off on your paper towel, but then you can also form them into a tip. You can use them to kind of guide your paint. You can also use them for the details. So you don't need a really skinny brush if you don't want to for these details. If you just have something like this and it's a bit firmer that you can form it, you can get away with that too. Now I'm thinking to do this leaf like it's more behind and it's touching this one. So I might want to let it dry for a minute before I come in and do all of that. I could probably do some details on this little section right here and just use some dark green or even brown to fill that in. So why don't we do that? I'm just gonna use, you can use any brush and just fill this in with a dark green. So we cover up the that little gap there, kind of create a little bit of texture. And like I say, I think it could even have a little bit of a brownish color. So I'm just going to drop some of that into it. Let's just drop some water first in here. And then let's take, I've got a brownish kind of messy color on my palette. I'm going to drop a little bit of that right on top. And I'm just going to call that good for this little section. It's in shadow in the photo. And then what I'm going to do is I'll come in and work on the stem after. So yes, I'm just kind of playing right there. Then I'm going to go ahead and dry everything and come in and just refine the last few things on the daffodil flower, and then I'll finish up the leaves. Okay, so I've gone ahead and dried that. I'm going to come and work on this stem. I'm just going to tip it on its side. I think I might have more control that way. And I've got my number 6. It's kind of a little bit flattened, but I'm going to come in here and just paint that with water. Then come into my darker green, make sure I'm tapped off enough. I'm gonna try and just come along this underside here and put a little bit darker green just along there. Yeah, tipping the page like this makes me feel like I've got a lot more control, so do what you need to do. Actually, I'm gonna lift a little bit right here. I don't want the stem too dark because the leaf behind it is what I wanna go a little bit darker. So just blend that out with a Simply Simmons brush. And then I could go ahead and do this leaf here, and then I'll come back and do the leaf behind after that other area is dry. or I should say after the stem is dry. So why don't we just go ahead and do wet on wet again? I don't know, that just comes naturally to me to work wet on wet. I'm going to put a little bit of this gold once again. Ooh, I think it would be really pretty right underneath of here, so it looks like there's some reflected color. Let's do that. Let's just put a little bit more of it. Just blend that out with a little bit of water. And then again, I'll use a smaller brush for the details, but actually I'll show you. Why don't I show you how to use this firmer brush for details in case you don't have a small brush on hand. So pinching it like so. You want to kind of tap off any excess water. You don't want to be too wet. And once again, I am finding I really like the control I'm getting. So I'm going to just move to the side and do this. It's helping me get nice controlled lines here. So I'm just going to do it like this. And this stamp paper now, as you know, I kind of went wet on wet, but I'm not soaking wet. The Simply Simmons brushes don't put quite as much water onto your page as a soft brush that holds more water. So that's how I'm maintaining these lines. And I also don't have a ton of water on this brush. So that's not bad. I'm going to do a few more. So let's, again, add a little more. Make sure you can also kind of just rub it off on the edge of your palette. If you have concentrated paint, you should be okay. Let's try this. I'm just going to add a few more. That's the one thing, sometimes you do it sideways. You don't always see exactly what you're doing as well. But I'm going to go a little darker down here. And I'm just going to just take it a little more random. So I get a little bit more of a natural look to this, so it doesn't look quite as contrived. Something like that. And maybe we'll just put a tiny bit more down here because maybe it's in shadow right down here, right? Yeah, I think I like that. Maybe just tweak a little bit along this edge. Just smooth things out a little bit because I kind of did a little bit of a weird shape earlier. Yeah, I like that. Just come a little bit further. There we go. Tap it off. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and dry it again because I want everything dry before I do the final little bit of yellow here and this leaf here. So I'll just dry it quick and I'll be back. Okay, I'm going to put a tiny bit of yellow here. I'm mostly happy with how that's looking, but I don't know. I did lift up more yellow than maybe I would have liked to. I'm just going to put a tiny bit in there and just gently soften it with water, and hopefully we will be okay with how that looks. I think it's going to be okay. I actually don't mind a little more light in there. I'll just lift a bit. All right, just a little bit more along the edge. Now, I want to work on that tiny little shape there with just that tiny little bit of our bluey color. So I'll just take a tiny little bit out of this palette here. Not too much. And this is where we're just going to fix this tiny little shape that I kind of lifted earlier. Actually, a little more water. Don't want this to be too dark. Just fill that in. There we go. Can even just drag it down a little bit if we wanted to, or we can leave it hard edged. That's fine too. Just tap a little bit of water just in here. It's not too dark. And then this last leaf. So to keep myself from dragging myself through the paint, I might just go over here and let's give it a try. And I'm going to be going darker on either side of the stem, so it makes the stem pop a little bit. So just fill that in with a little more water. You might be able to tell I don't have water in every nook and cranny, and that's okay. That'll fill in. So let's go ahead with this green. And well, let's work on this section first, and then we'll move over to the other one. So again, do some of these creases and folds. Tap it off. This is where I want to be quite careful. Go a little bit heavier here. A little bit more. Again, we're wanting to push this stem, or sorry, push this leaf behind the stem. Okay. Just do these lines now, kind of wet on damp. Blending, I kind of like that. Maybe put a little bit more down here again, push it behind this one. So put a little more green, it'll push it. Give the impression that it's behind. Putting darkness there pushes it behind whatever's in front of it visually. Okay, then this one I'll just quickly, the same thing, except I know I already put water. I'm just putting a tiny bit more. Don't want to be too wet. These Simply Simmons brushes are good for controlling the water. They don't they don't put as much water down, but you can also lift a little excess out with them really easily. So I'm going to come in here now. And once again, darkness along the edge of the stem. And then upwards we go. Like this. Ooh, try to keep your lines somewhat making sense with the shape of the leaf. I think I'm actually kind of happy with that, just like that. Let's see, let's stand it up. Maybe just a little bit more so it doesn't look like it's disconnected from the darkness below. Just little bits here and there. Let's tip the page a little bit so I have a little more control. Something like that. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. You know what we didn't do on this one was a little bit of this color, the golden color. Not that it needs gold color on every leaf, but kind of like the way that was just adding a little bit of harmony, and I don't know, I just liked it. Maybe that looks a little bit dead, does it? Let's lift a little bit of it out. Might put a tiny bit more green, just a little bit of control, a little bit of detail. You know what I did? I kind of swung that stem a little bit, maybe a little too much on the outside of that. I'm going to see if I can bring that down. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to wash some areas out of this. So you're going to see me doing some fixing. And then I will see if I can make this work. So I'm going to make this leaf here wider. So I'm just using this same shader brush. I sometimes call it my scrubber brush, but I'm using it to kind of rub the paint and hopefully lift some of it out. And I'm going to have to make some tweaks. So just lifting anywhere it's dark. I'm just rubbing back and forth for now until I get this kind of lifted, and then I will come in here and change the shape. So you know what, I'm just going to take all of this darker area out. So I have my water over here. I keep dipping into my water and then kind of just scrubbing. Yeah, I think that's going to work. I just have to play with the stem. So I'm going to tap a little bit of that off with this paper towel. I'm going to just drop a little bit of the lighter green on top of it, just so we have a layer kind of already started. I'm just going to go ahead and wet this shape and then use my light green and kind of do wet on wet everywhere so that I fill this in. Okay, that's a lot. I could even, I'm just going to add a little water. I'm going to even add a little bit of that yellow color right now as well. Make sure I don't make it too intensely green. Let's just tap off on here. Put a little bit of the yellow in here, right here maybe. Again, I'm just going to tip my paper so that I'm happy with this line. I want a nice clean line along this edge. Okay. And then I'll see how it works for me to kind of pull this stem in. You know what I might even do? I might scrub just a little bit here because I'm seeing quite a bit of contrast where I had that white gap, right? So just scrubbing that a little bit so it's a little bit less stark there. And drop just a tiny bit more green maybe, and then I'm going to let it dry, and then I'll come in and play with things a little bit. All right, so now that it's dry, I'm going to try and redraw this stem, and it might be easier once again to tip it this way. So I'll just go ahead and do this, but I'm going to try and bring it down closer to here. Something more like that, but I'm going to lift a little bit of this pencil because I'm pretty dark. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to paint the stem first, then I'll do each side of the leaf. So I'm going to come in here and just... I'm going to lift a little bit right there too. I could have lifted that earlier, right where the kind of the join was. So I'm just going to put the water on here. I might even put a tiny little bit more of the green. This is the lighter green. Just fill in the area Oops. Almost going off of my line here. Just going to tap that off and put a little bit more water. Just like so. Okay, then I'll use that tiny brush once again in the darker green and do my line. I'll see if I can do it upright. I just need to be really careful. I find this position a little more challenging. So you can see I'm working wet on wet, so I'm kind of getting that nice slight bleed. I'm trying to kind of keep going in this direction. I almost deviating a little bit from the stem there, but I'm happier because I'm just bringing it in closer to the center of that. And then I'll just use my water brush and just kind of blend, because as you can see, it's kind of drawing a little bit funny. So I'm just going to smooth that out a little bit. I'm just using water. And then I'm going to dry everything before I come back in and do this leaf, because I'm going to try and push it back again the way I did before. Okay, so for the back leaf, I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. Why don't we start on the easier side in here, and then we'll do the larger side after. So I'm just going to put some water there, and then I'm just going to use the small brush and just do a few creases and folds on here. Just come down the side first. Again, I might turn the page ever so slightly because I'm finding definitely that's helping. Just put a little more of that green. It's maybe even good enough. I might not push this as, right here I can go further with the darkness, push it behind. I don't know if I'm going to go as intense with that this time because the stem is so dark on that side that I want to show the change, the variation. Usually I would go darker to push it back, but I might end up getting too dark, so I'll just go something like that. I think I'm okay with that. Let's just use the firmer brush and just kind of soften here because it's a little bit of a hard edge. So just soften and tap off, or lift a little bit even. So almost like lift that little line there, just like so. Yeah, something like that. Okay, now I'm going to come on to the other side and just fill this in. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just come along this edge first of the stem. So I'm on the leaf, not the stem, but I'm just going to drop in that dark green that's going to help set it apart from the stem, because the stem is light, right, on this side. Just create that darker area, and then I'm going to have to make it work with the rest of this leaf. So let's just come up here, the darker green. I might even use, you know what, I might use the firmer brush to kind of pull it a little bit. I feel like I might have a little bit more control, and it's going to need a little bit of encouragement because the paper is slightly, just ever so slightly, I don't know if you want to say rough, but just not quite the same. Once you've done enough lifting, sometimes your paper can just change in behavior ever so slightly. And I feel like it's maybe just slightly changed here. So I want to be careful with how I work with it. Try and be gentle to the paper. I'm just going to tip the page just to have a little more control once again. Just like that. I want to get a little bit darker on this side of the leaf because I can see that's the side that definitely gone darker lower down. I might even need to put a little bit more darkness here to kind of make it look cohesive, but I'm just going to soften it and lift. The big thing is trying to keep that whole leaf looking cohesive, or one leaf, even though it's broken up by the stems. So that's where I'm trying to get that look. So that's where I'm picking out a little bit more, because something didn't quite feel cohesive. I'm gonna just go ahead and wet this shape. It's probably damp right now, but I think I can get away with doing this. So A little more water here. Again, the stem is dry, right? But I'm going to see if I can kind of create a little bit of that. Give it the impression that there's lighter lines coming through and the other parts are darker. So along here and here. I'm just going to put a little bit more dark green on this leaf and help push it behind the stem. And then just lift again so I get a little bit of light along this edge. And then I think I'm going to be happy. Maybe, you know what, maybe just a tiny, tiny bit of dark on the edge. It needs a little something. Just a very small hint. Yeah, something like that. I think I'm okay with this. Then I'm just going to tap a little bit of brown, I think, in here. Not that you have to. I'm just feeling like, hey, this particular green got very vibrant and dark in the process of kind of tweaking it. So I'm just going to put a little bit of brown to neutralize things. Just the base of this. And then I might even put a tiny bit of green, just a little bit on this leaf here. So once again, I'm going to just tip my page, just make it a touch easier. So I've got the Simply Simmons brush. I'm going to, whoops, not paint the table. Oh well. I'm going to pinch it and do this just to kind of smooth this out a little bit along here and just bring just a tiny bit more of this darker green into the picture. A little bit of harmony because that one leaf got so dark. And I might even tap just the smallest amount of a little bit of brown down here too. You know what, while I'm at it, I'm just going to put just a small amount of green on this one. So just repeating those steps. And I'll just speed the video up because I think now at this point it's just as self-explanatory as I layer a little bit more green on here. Yeah, I think that worked. Thanks so much for joining me as we painted this yellow daffodil together. I hope you enjoyed watching the entire process and that this video brought a little taste of God's beauty and peace into your everyday life, and that it's inspired you to continue enjoying your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye.